if I decide to do something, it's in my mind effectively already done. You know what I mean? Like I have to do it. If I tell myself I'm going to do it, it must be done. Like I have that affinity where I need to check the box. I need to accomplish the goal. If I say I'm going to do something, I need to do it. So I think that serves me well in business because I don't easily move off of my goals. If things become difficult or, there's some workaround that's required, I'll figure out a way to get it done. And I always make sure that whatever we start is finished. So I think I think tenacity would be the one.
Welcome to the Wild West Real Estate Podcast. And now, here's your host, Mark Henteman. Today's guest is a former college athlete turned entrepreneur, then real estate investor. He's the founder of Green Springs Capital Group. I'd like to welcome Brian Green.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. I'm excited to get started, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on. I've known you for a while now, and you're a great guy. I'm eager to dig into your past and how you got where you are in your real estate investing.
Perfect. Thank you again for having me, and I'm excited to tell my story. I think that in most of our conversations, it's just been in passing, and we've talked in small portions, but now we're going to dig into it.
Right. Yeah. So let's jump in. Okay. So tell us where you are and kind of how you got started.
Sure. So I'm in upstate New York, about 3 hours north of New York City in Saratoga Springs. I started buying real estate in 2015, actually kind of in a weird spot. I was exiting a former company, kind of didn't know what I was going to do next. I was a guy that had never really worked for somebody else as a W-2, or at least not since, like high school. So I was not interested in going to get a job in the corporate world. So then I started learning about real estate and went out and just bought a 4-unit property and got started.
Oh, cool. Great. And just to touch upon it, you have a kind of an interesting trajectory. You were a college football player, and then you became an entrepreneur shortly after graduating. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. So when I was in college, I started working for my brother, a business mentor that had previously been an executive at Verizon. He had taken an early retirement and he opened a paging store. Actually, this was in the 90s in Albany. So this is the time when paging was a big thing before cell phones. So I started working with them, and then cell phones, were just coming on. So then soon after I graduated from college, I worked with them full time. And then I, kind of moved within, while still working with them, we went on to open our own stores. Eventually got a contract with Verizon Wireless and just started building out my business from there.
Cool. So you became an entrepreneur and had a couple Verizon stores?
Yeah, it started with a couple. And then over the course of 10 plus years, I got up to 23 stores. They were located mostly in upstate New York, from Plattsburgh all the way down into Sullivan County, which is about an hour north of the city. And then I extended into Vermont and Western Massachusetts.
Now, I know this is a real estate podcast, but that's kind of fascinating. You had 23 Verizon stores. Just quickly, how do you do that? How do you spread? How do you expand? Do you get financing and just get like a roadmap and start acquiring?
It's kind of a mix. So after the first couple stores, Verizon will actually fund you partially on your new store openings. They would have to approve any new location, of course. But we went out and we found the locations, the actual physical addresses, and we spent the capital out of operating capital from our other stores, as well as monies coming in from our business mentor who funded a lot of our initial startup. And then over time, it just kind of snowballed, and one store leads to another store, and then you start building out your staff, and then we ended up with 23 at one point.
Wow, that's impressive. So that's a pretty nice aligned interest. So Verizon wants to increase the number of their stores. So they help incentivize you to open up these stores?
Yeah, that's right. Yep. So at that time, I'm not sure how it is now, but at the time, about half of the stores were owned by Verizon and the other half were privately owned, like my stores. So most customers would never know the difference, but that's how they got greater distribution into tertiary markets,
I
was to
see.
have private individuals open up stores under their umbrella.
Oh, cool. And do you still own any Verizon, or did you sell them all?
I sold them all. So at the end of 2014, I had retracted back a little bit down to 15 stores, only because as the product cell phones started to mature, the margins came down. Some of the markets that were effectively profitable before became unprofitable. So I retracted back to my best 15. And then we were approached unprovoked by a company from the West Coast, who at the time I think had 300 or 400 stores across the country, and they were interested in entering the Albany market. So they made us an offer, and it was the right number at the right time, and I just decided to sell them all.
And did you sell them because you felt like that industry was being disrupted?
I sold because I felt like a couple things. At first, I think at some point I was getting burned out from it.
Okay.
Just being in retail that long,
Okay.
I kind of equate it to the restaurant industry,
Okay.
where it's a lot of heavy turnover of employees, geographically spread all over the place, traveling to stores. There's just a lot of moving parts. In addition to that, the offer in my mind was lucrative enough to say yes. I felt like they were overpaying because they were a strategic buyer, right? They wanted to buy the market just as much as they wanted the actual stores. And the only way they could get into the market was to buy my stores. And so effectively, I wasn't there anymore because Verizon wouldn't allow them to add stores on top of other stores. It just wouldn't make any sense. So if they wanted to get in the market, they had to kind of get rid of me one way or another. And the one way to do that was to overpay for the stores, right?
Yeah, you were an important piece, so they
Yeah,
overpaid.
yeah,
Great.
that's right. Yep.
Good position to be in.
Yes, yes. At the time, it was very exciting, but also a little surprising because I wasn't sure, I wasn't prepared for it because I wasn't looking to sell and I wasn't sure what to do next. It was kind of a transition time.
How old were you?
Let's see, that was 2014. I would have been 34.
34? Okay.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
not bad to be exiting something like that at age 34. And you had to decide your next chapter.
Yeah, that's right. So, I took a couple months off, started doing a lot of research and reading and trying to, meeting with like financial advisors who were trying to, pitch me on like 4% rules and all these other, things that they normally would say to like 65-year-old clients.
Just
And
regarding pure investments.
yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, for a while, I wasn't really sure what to do. And then once I bought my first property, which I think was 4 months later, and started operating it and started kind of learning the mechanics of it and could see what it could do, even on that small scale of, having just a 4-unit property. At that point, I was like, okay, this is what I need to do. I can still work for myself. I can create my own business. And this is where I'm going.
Great. And you had to defy those financial advisors to do that. I know, my encounters with financial advisors back at the start, nobody would ever recommend real estate.
Yeah, none, zero.
Partially because of their own self-interest.
Absolutely. They can't sell it. So, and they can't profit from it. So they would never recommend it. But
They'll
there was
call
a
it
few times.
risky.
Yeah, I remember the first company I went with, they were a Goldman Sachs affiliate. So I was speaking with my advisor and I started talking to him about alternative investments like note investing and, being limited partnerships and syndications. And his eyes kind of glazed over. And then he went on to say, about how risky they were and,
Of course.
how they don't offer those things here and wouldn't really advise it and like all kinds of things. So I guess that's just what to expect from the industry.
Of course, yeah, and ridiculous because
Right, right.
we've seen how the
Yeah,
market has crashed and purely driven by fear or greed.
right.
It's hard to make sense of that. I don't want to bash that, but had a similar journey. Got into real estate. I'm like, oh my God, this makes so much sense, so much more sense than the alternatives.
Yeah, I mean it's math, right? In the end, so like the math, I like the idea that you could sit down and underwrite a property and you can see where it's going. You can kind of plan for it accordingly. You can control it
Yep.
for the most part. All that, once I could figure out how to do that, it just clicked and it made sense.
So what were your first acquisitions?
small multis. So, like I said, I bought a 4 unit property. Of course, I didn't know what I was doing, so I paid all cash.
Okay.
Started self managing. I thought I was going to start doing the maintenance work and like mowing the lawns and snow plowing and all this stuff. Because in my mind, I had no
Yeah.
experience with real estate investors, so I was like, oh, people that own real estate, they manage it themselves and they take care of it themselves. So I bought the 4 and I started doing that. And then I bought a couple more, I think it was another 4 unit, 3 unit. I think over the first 2 or 3 years, I scaled up to 24 units. Again, still doing all of the work myself,
Oh, cool.
including showings and, lease write-ups and dispatching maintenance people. And I was doing everything.
My first duplex I bought, the first thing I bought after I closed was a lawnmower.
Isn't
Like,
that funny? Yeah.
yeah, just all
Yeah.
right, I got a property. I guess I got to mow
Yeah.
the lawn.
Yeah, I had my version of that was at the time I had a pickup truck. I
Oh
still drive a
yeah.
truck. I still drive a truck, and but a nicer one. So then at the time, I went and bought a snow plow. Right, I got a snow plow for my truck because I was going to go
Oh,
around and plow the driveways. What a
oh,
disaster that was! Yeah, I sold the plow to somebody else within 12 months.
oh, really?
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice, cool. So you said you had a few rentals. Like what was
Mhm.
those? Like 4 to 6 units? What duplexes?
Yeah,
What kind
four
of
to
size?
six units. I mean, I was doing mostly, like a modified burr of those buildings. So I go
Okay.
in and we would renovate them pretty significantly. In some cases, everything. I remember one property, it was a 3 unit we bought as a bank foreclosure. And I think we spent, it was might be like a $315,000 acquisition at the time. And I'm pretty sure I spent $240,000 fixing it up. But then when it
Okay.
was finished, it had appraised for I want to say like 700. So I was able to pull all my own capital out and I had a brand new building. And, now it's probably worth closer to 900,000 or a million. So, I just kept doing that over and over again. And I was just recycling the same cash because I was using all my own money.
Yep.
And, it was kind of snowballing on top of each other.
Amazing. Where
Yeah.
were you getting like your education, your guidance? You mentioned Burr. Were you I mean, Bigger Pockets was probably around back then. Yeah, where were you learning?
So I'm a fairly avid reader, more so now than then, but I started reading everything I could get my hands on back then. Like every real estate book that anybody would recommend, I would read it. So a lot of it was that. And then you mentioned Bigger Pockets. I think that I've listened to, I don't get to all the episodes now because there's too many of them, but I want to say that I listened to all 500 of the first episodes.
Really? Okay.
And
I think I
when I started, they were at like episode 100. So I went back to zero because that's just kind of how my mind works. And I started at the beginning and went all the way through, and I just kept carrying with it. So yeah, I listen to a lot of podcasts too.
Do you remember who their first guest was?
Oh, man,
I
I
have no
don't.
idea. Yeah,
I don't either. No,
I'd be
now that you're
curious.
asking about that, now I'm gonna have to find out.
I'm kind of curious. Yeah, who would
Yeah,
who would be guest number one? I think I was number 280. I did
nice.
did
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
But cool. Yeah, obviously they provide a lot of great education and information and just support. I think it's just when they came onto the scene, and I think I had been investing for 6 years or 8 years by then. It was nice. There was a community finally.
right. Yeah, and people that you could kind of share ideas with, right? Because and I don't know how it is for you or back then. Like when you try to talk to people in your local community, it's hard to find people that are thinking in those same terms. Like trying to, no sane person is walking around saying, "Oh yeah, my goal this year is to buy 20 units." Like that just doesn't happen.
Right.
You have to find a special community to find those people.
Totally. I was trying to push it on my writing colleagues in
Yeah,
the comedy business, and nobody was biting.
yeah,
But I would
yeah,
convince them to go in on some deals.
yeah.
Cool. So yeah, what and does that bring you up to the present, or like yeah, where are you now?
So that in like 2019, end of 2018 was the time that my brother came on and became a partner with me. We changed the company structure a little bit. So now from that point on, everything we do is 50-50 partnership. And, we kind of diversified our roles a little bit so that I was able to focus on the business side of things, acquisitions. I'm also a licensed broker, so I was doing a lot of that work and trying to find deals. He took over project management for all the construction that was going on in our rehabs. as well
Okay.
as all the property maintenance work. So that, he was handling all the work orders, dispatching contractors, that kind of stuff. So from there, in the last 2 years, we went from 24 units to 101, all still the same kind of business model, self-funding the projects, burring apartment complexes, but we've moved up into like I'd say medium-sized, 20-unit type properties with the same concepts though. Same, buy them, do heavy value add, rent them out, and recapitalize.
Awesome. So it sounds like after those first handful of properties, you accelerated as a business. And what would you attribute that to? Like you and your brother kind of having specific roles? Did you, what was the, what do you think helped you, grow quicker? Was it specializing in various areas, or were you more intentional?
It was a little bit of both, I think. Because before he came on, I was doing everything as an individual, right? And then when you bring on somebody else, kind of the 1 + 1 = 3 type methodology, right? So you freeze up more of your time to focus on the things that are more important. So like, acquiring new buildings is obviously the most important thing we're doing. So I had far more time to do that instead of dealing with tenant issues and other type of property management items that I was dealing with before. The other part of it is when my brother came on, the amount of capital we had deployed to deploy on properties doubled, right? Because now he brought
Sure.
in all his cash, included with what I had already acquired. So we had more buying power also. So I think it was a combination of both of those things that kind of allowed us to get to the point we are now.
Okay.
Yeah,
And you're pretty vertically integrated. You mentioned that you do construction.
that's right. So we property manage all of our own rentals. We have started in recent years bringing on our own renovation contractors, our own maintenance contractor. We have somebody that does inspections for us, and we have a property manager, a woman now that is actually on our leadership team. She started several years ago just doing showings for me, but now we've kind of built out our own infrastructure because we're building it out so that we're ready to to get to 200, 300, 400, 500 units. So we're just continuing building out that team. But yes, like you said, vertical integration, that's the direction we're going because it gives us control over the entire process, and we're not subjugated to finding subcontractors and outsourcing to vendors and things that either slow down the process or cost more money.
Right. So that most of those people are in-house. They're not third party.
It's a mixture. Most of them are still independent contractors because their roles might be project based, but others on the team are more regular, and we're giving them, depending on what their role is, like the contractors, the construction guys, they'll get a flat amount every single month, and they're doing various renovations for us the entire month over month over month over month. So they have their own operating business, but they're basically at this time they only have a contract with us to do our projects.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of like on my end as well. Like don't they're not under our umbrella, but we give them most of their business,
Yeah,
keep them
that's right.
busy.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's nice.
Yeah.
And by doing that, like if you're vertically integrated that way, do you feel like it requires more focus on your business systems, your core, how you operate and how things get delegated?
Absolutely. Right now, we're this year going through an integration with, actually, an integrator, EOS integrator. So we're
Oh,
implementing EOS in our company.
I was going to
Uh,
ask about if you had outsourced or reached out to someone like that. You're doing EOS.
that's right. Yep. So, like many, I've read that book, Traction, maybe 3 times, and it made sense, but we tried to self-implement, and it just did not take. Probably had something to do with how many different places we were running and the dynamic with it just being my brother and myself. So this year we committed to it, and we brought in an integrator. And that's been fantastic. So now we have clear path forward. We all have our roles even more defined than they were before, and we have our path forward.
Great. And could you speak to that a little bit? Like, so you have an integrator. Is that someone who just comes in and like observes how you're doing things and gives you, tries to tweak things, or how does that work?
I would term him more like a consultant, although I'm not sure that they would like that title. That's kind of what they are. You're hiring them to come in. They have a lot of experience with small to medium-sized businesses. And they come in with their own EOS system, which is explained in the book. But they'll walk you through like an accountability chart and your long-term vision and your marketing plan and what all your major issues are. So he meets with us. He's met with us, I think, 5 times. It's full day meetings. You rent out a conference room, and the leadership team for the company meets together with him, and you go through all these strategic things. You go over what your goals are for the next 90 days. You kind of air out your laundry. Anybody that's upset with somebody else about a certain activity or problem within the company, all that stuff gets solved then. So those days that we've spent with the implementer have been invaluable. I mean, the position that our company's in today versus where it was 4 months ago from an operations and system standpoint that you spoke of is night and day.
Really
Yeah.
amazing. I hear that same comment on other people that I know who have used EOS. I might have to check that out. And what would you say? Do you have measurable results? Like, I don't know how long ago you did that, but can you see, is the difference showing up on how your annual growth is or your profitability?
I would say it's hard to define at this point because it's only been 6 months. I
Okay.
will tell you that there's distinct differences. So, for example, we started in February. At that time, we conceptually were thinking about adding some short-term rentals to our properties, but we had nothing planned for that. It was not even within the scope of our consideration to get involved in a development project, which now we're under contract to do a development project for 36 apartment units. I think it's just given us more confidence and expanded our mindset, if that makes sense,
Okay.
as to what is possible given the team that we've put together. So I think that's so far. When we get to the end of the year, I'll have numbers. Because we'll have 12 months worth of track record. But so far, that's been the value.
And it's caused you to consider diversifying into, I think you said, short-term rentals and construction.
That's right. So within our apartment buildings, our existing, we've actually started. We're at Saratoga Springs, where we're located, fairly touristy town. The city has the oldest horse racing track in the country.
Oh,
So
right.
all the thoroughbreds that go to like the Derby, they come up here in the summer and they race. So we have a horse track racing season that goes from mid-July through Labor Day, where the population of the city nearly triples. So we have started converting some of our strategic units within our apartment buildings to short-term rentals. So to this point, we've converted 2 of them, and we're going to be doing 3 more from now into the fall. But the goal now will be that we're going to have 10% of our rental portfolio as short-term rentals. And we see it as a way to just explode cash flow within existing multifamily buildings that already are positive cash flow. So I'm not underrating the deals when we buy something to factor in short-term rentals. It's kind of just like, the icing on the cake, that if we
Sure.
can get short-term rentals, I mean, the revenue on what we're seeing so far already is, 3, 4x what we get on a long-term rental. So if we can get 10% of our portfolio in that position, it just makes sense for us to do that.
Yeah, that sounds great. And
Yeah.
up in upstate New York, do you run into any regulations regarding short-term rentals?
So surprisingly enough, no. We have lots of regulations as it relates to long-term rentals in New York State tenant law. But short-term in the county and cities that we operate, they don't even charge a tax on short-term rentals to this point. So there's no permits required. There's no taxing, like I said. I think we're kind of benefiting similarly to places that have long-term histories of doing short-term rentals before there was Airbnb and VRBO. Places like Destin, Florida, and I don't know where else you might consider the same, but here people have been renting their houses out for track season for decades. It's always been a part of the community.
Sure.
So when Airbnb came on, it was just a natural extension of that. It just gave you a platform to rent it out, right? So the local community is looks upon it very favorably, although as well as I do that at some point they'll start taxing that, but which is fine. But as long as they let us operate normally, then we're good with it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's great. That sounds exciting. Where do you plan now that you've done this stint with EOS?
Mhm.
Has it allowed you to step back and kind of conceptualize bigger goals, long-term goals? What are you hoping to do with your company?
We want to continue to grow organically. We've set a 10-year target of owning and operating 1,000 rental units. The distribution of what that looks like is to be determined. I think the language we use is we want 1,000 exceptional homes by 2032 under our portfolio. So at least in the near term, the next couple of years, that means adding about 50 to 75 and then eventually 100 units a year as we kind of move forward. And development is going to be a key piece of that, even though I wouldn't have said that to you 6 months ago, only because of the markets we're in. They're definitely tertiary, so there's not a huge inventory of existing multifamilies to purchase. So for us to get to our goals, we're going to have to use a couple different methods to do that. So it's going to include development, and it's going to include buying existing multifamilies and doing our normal value add renovation strategy.
Okay. And you said your markets, are your markets mostly like within a drive? Are they all in the upstate New York area?
They are. Yep. For our company, we only focus on, right now anyways, 2 counties. So Saratoga County and Warren County, which Warren County encapsulates Glens Falls, New York, and Lake George. So to give you some context, in all of upstate New York, and I think this has gone on for maybe the last 10 years, there's only 2 counties that have positive population growth, and that is Saratoga County, and that is, I believe, Tompkins County, which is where Ithaca College is. Yep. Other than that, all the growth in New York State, if there is any, is in the Hudson Valley and down towards New York City.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So everything else in upstate New York is depleting population besides those 2 counties, which is where we operate.
Oh no.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's where I came from. I came from the Midwest, Cleveland, and yeah, it's you're dealing. Those are factors. Is the long term demographic trends, and there's still ways to make it work. You just gotta be aware. The more
Sure,
you
absolutely
are aware, you can play it the right way.
That's right. Yep.
That's all great. Yeah, that's nice. Those are all beautiful areas. The Hudson Valley's pretty amazing, and up by Lake George, and where where I just mentioned the Olympics. Where was the Olympics?
Lake Placid. Yes.
Lake Placid. Yeah.
Lake Placid's about an hour and a half north of us. Yes.
All amazing places.
Yeah.
Cool.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Let's shift. What's a trait you possess that has served you most in real estate in life?
I would say I'll go with tenacity.
Tenacity?
Yeah, I think that for me, if I decide to do something, it's in my mind effectively already done. You know what I mean? Like I have to do it. If I tell myself I'm going to do it, it must be done. Like I have that affinity where I need to check the box. I need to accomplish the goal. If I say I'm going to do something, I need to do it. So I think that serves me well in business because I don't easily move off of my goals. If things become difficult or, there's some workaround that's required, I'll figure out a way to get it done. And I always make sure that whatever we start is finished. So I think that, I think tenacity would be the one.
That's great. Yeah. I haven't thought of it this way, but I'm a little bit the same way, like the same kind of temperament. And it's almost, it could be to a fault, just having a single focus. And it's the opposite of ADD. It's,
I agree.
It's almost like Asperger's to a certain extent. You could just, when you lock into something, you could stay on it forever until it's done.
I don't know how it is with you, but I find that at times I have to purposefully shut it down in my mind. So I have to say, okay, work's done for the day or work's done for the week, or I'm on vacation. I shouldn't be thinking about, the deal that we didn't get last week or whatever. But, it has its challenges and its pros, I think.
Sure.
Yeah.
What's a daily habit that brings you the most benefit?
I think it's my morning routine. I'm pretty structured and disciplined in my routine. I wake up around the same exact time every day. The first thing I do is pick up a book and read for 30 to 45 minutes. Then I meditate, and at some point within the next 30 to 45 minutes, I go out in the garage or I go to the gym and I work out. So I do that pretty much every single day between, 5 a.m. and it almost sometimes extends to 10 a.m. But that sets the framework for my entire day. And if I don't get that in and that structure in, then I feel lethargic and I just cannot focus properly. So for me, that's that morning routine.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. What advice would you give to a younger self?
I say this often, but we spoke about my former business in retail, and I would tell myself that instead of leasing the properties that we had all of our stores in, that I would have purchased that real estate. We had leases for all the stores in retail strip plazas or freestanding buildings because the guy gave us flexibility and we saw it as a hedge against risk. In retrospect, I would have loved to have owned all of those buildings so that when I sold my company, I could have became the landlord for the new business and moved in, and I could have continued on. And now I own 15 different, strip malls or freestanding buildings all across the Northeast. So this is before I found real estate. So wasn't thinking in those terms, but it's basically the McDonald's model, right? You need to own the real estate.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. The Ray Kroc
Yeah.
path.
Yep. That's right.
Lastly, how important is mindset to your success?
I think it's hugely important. And I think a big part of this is who you associate with and what kind of rooms you place yourself in. It's if you, at some point, you have to, if you want to reach a certain level, I found that you need to find other people that are working in those under those terms and with those same kind of goals, because otherwise their mindsets will kind of transfer onto you, which is fine. I mean, not everyone wants to wake up every day and go buy $5 million buildings, or a lot of people will think that that's crazy. Like, why would you do that? So you need to get yourself in rooms where people are doing that all the time, and it's not even a big deal. And then that starts to translate into your mind, where you start thinking the same way, like, oh, I'll make an offer for $10 million in that building. It's not a big deal. If you told me that 8 years ago, I would have said you're crazy. Like, why would I ever do that? It's way too, I don't have that much money. Where am I going to get it from? Nobody does this. But I think that the mindset is definitely something that translates between people.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's a good observation. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
contagious. Whatever your community, your tribe
Yes,
uh,
absolutely.
that you're around. Awesome. I don't know if I introduced you or tipped you off to our question round, but I have a bunch of random questions. Some of them are kind of straightforward, and others are a little bit out of left field. But are you
Okay.
ready?
Sure, I am. Yes, I might have cheated a little bit and listened to a couple of your episodes
Oh,
today.
great. Then good,
Yes.
good, good. Now I don't feel so bad.
Yeah, yeah.
The book you've recommended most over the past year.
I'm going to hedge a little bit on that and say two different books. One is Traction, that we've already mentioned.
Yep.
Anybody that brings up business to me, or how to get started or how to get organized, I always reference Traction. The other one is The Comfort Crisis. I read that a couple months ago. If you ask me the author, I'll never remember it because I'm terrible with names.
The Comfort
But
Crisis is what it's called. I'm not familiar
Comfort
with it.
Crisis, yeah, that's right. It's right over my shoulder here too. But that book is about the benefits that humans experience from putting themselves in difficult situations.
Oh, cool. I
He
love
speaks
that.
a lot about physical difficulty.
Sure. Stress.
He has an example in the book about like doing a 30-day camping and hunting trip to Alaska with nothing besides what they bring in and two other guys. I think there's a Japanese term that they reference in the sogi. It's this process where you strain your body to a certain extent, and it gives you some clarity of mind, and it kind of gives you perspective. And now I don't go on 30-day trips to Alaska, but I do enjoy a lot of hiking. I do very strenuous exercise. So I can appreciate that kind of mindset where you need to test your body. So that book just spoke to me, and it's fantastic. I recommend that to everyone.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I love that. I love that concept. That concept's been around and maybe not too widespread, but yeah, the fact that you got to put yourself under stress
Yes.
and physical, mental stress challenges is what, builds your strength.
Yeah.
I also like I don't know when I started this, but just it feels like for a decade or more, just doing ice cold plunges and extreme heat and all that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it gives you mental strength just as much as physical, right?
Yep. Absolutely. Aside from real estate, one thing you could spend all day talking about.
Well, you mentioned that I was a college athlete. I played football in college, so even to this day, I am a huge New York Giants fan. So
Okay.
I could talk to you about football for most of any day. I like to think that my mindset now goes more to the business side of the game. So I would tell you that most people's dream would be to play professional football, but for the last 20 years or something, I would say that when people ask me, I would say, well, no, my dream job would be the general manager of a football team because I like the financial side. I like the player acquisitions. I like that whole business angle of it. I still like watching the games too, but I could talk about the comings and goings of players and transactions and contracts all day.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
What was your favorite movie when you were 15?
It's probably still my favorite movie today. It's Shawshank Redemption.
Okay.
It seems weird for a 15-year-old, but I think back then I just liked it because it was a good story.
It
But
was a
now
great
that
story. Yeah.
yeah,
Stephen King.
no, Shawshank is
Did
Morgan
he not write
Freeman.
the was that not a Stephen King like a novel or a short story?
Oh, it might have been. If it was, I didn't recognize it because it wasn't like in the horror genre.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Now
but
now I somehow I've always had that in my head that Shawshank was a Stephen King, but I could be wrong. I could be off.
yeah. So anyways, at the time I just liked it because it was a good story, but now that I look back on it, like Andy Dufresne, the main character that's in prison, right, I kind of relate to the fact that he uses his mind to outsmart the warden. He's very studious, he's the professional, and then he also does like he chips his way out, right, but it
Right.
takes him years to do it, right, so it's a
Right.
little bit at a time, a little bit at a time, and even now like that translates into life, right, so it's always like that snowball effect from doing little things over and over again that turn into really big things. So I think if you look at it the movie that way, that's kind of exactly what he did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
I showed Shawshank Redemption to my 16-year-old daughter. Like one night we were just bored and looking for something to watch. I'm like, you got to watch this movie.
Yeah.
And
How
she
did
liked it,
I was gonna say, how did
surprisingly.
that go? That can go
Yeah,
either
a
way.
1980s. Was that probably 1980s prison story?
Yeah, it might have been early '90s, but still,
Early
sometimes
90s. Yeah.
I've got three daughters too. Sometimes you think like the greatest movies in the world, you want to show them, and they're like, "Dad, this is terrible. Why are we showing
Right.
this?"
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got three girls.
Yep.
Yeah.
So do I. Three girls. Yep.
Oh, cool. Cool.
Yeah.
Is there a high school friend you want to say hello to?
I'm one of those guys that kind of grew away from all my high school friends. So I would not
Yeah.
say I'll choose college instead.
Okay. Yeah.
One of my best friends from college is Reagan Jones, who's now high up in administration at the University of Notre Dame, and he's
Oh,
a
nice.
retired Marine. So I will say hello to Reagan.
Awesome. Awesome. Good. And lastly, when are you happiest?
When am I happiest? I would say when I'm on vacation with my family. Usually we go on vacation to a tropical climate. This year we went to Costa Rica. Places like that, though, where it's, there's no stress. It's just an enjoyable environment. I'm able to completely disconnect from work and just enjoy my wife and the three girls. That's when I'm the happiest.
That's awesome. Where did you go in Costa Rica?
We spent half our time in Manuel Antonio
Okay.
at the
Yeah.
beach, and then
Yep.
we spent the other half of the time at the volcano at Arenal.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yep. So
Awesome.
my girls actually enjoy the Arenal more. It's kind of that jungle environment. You've got the volcano in the background. It kind of looks like you're in a scene from Jurassic Park. Um,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
we had a great experience.
That's cool. I went to Manuel Antonio in Capos. Isn't
Okay.
Capos like the local town?
Yep.
And I didn't realize it, but when my wife and I think it was before we were married, we went down there and stayed in Capos, and it happened to be Carnival, the sort of that big celebration. And we went into like the center of the town was the big event was the bullfights. And I
Wow.
ended up getting in the ring with a bull by total accident, like as a tourist, because I sat on the wall. Like I sat on the wall trying to take pictures,
Yep.
and I happened to be sitting next to all the other matadors that were waiting. And they started like pointing to me, and eventually they like conspired to have me with wearing like flip-flops and
Oh,
having
amazing.
drank like 3 beers by at that time.
So what
And
happened? Did you get run around?
I went out onto into the ring, the arena. They introduced me, and I had a bull, a 1,400-pound bull charge at me, and
Yeah.
and I had that little red that you see in the cartoons. I had that little red thing that I had to wave in front of me, and thank God I survived. Like, that was a huge bull just
Yeah,
charging right at me. I could have died, but
absolutely.
anyway, that was
Yeah,
my
you're safe. You're safe now, and if you haven't already, how is that not an episode on Family Guy?
I know. Yeah, I don't know, but yeah, it makes a good story.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, cool. This has been awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining and sharing your story.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care. Thanks, Brian.
All right.
Thank you for joining us for the Wild West Real Estate Show. If you like what we're attempting to do here, please subscribe so we can continue sharing these with you. And if you want to check out our website, it's quantumcapitalinc.com. You'll find podcast episodes as well as multifamily properties we're looking at and how you could potentially participate. Look forward to seeing you guys soon on the Wild West Real Estate Show.